Plaintiff, Chinitha Kyles, says she has never met the defendant, but the defendant reached out to her and claimed that they share the same father. So Chinitha petitioned the court for a DNA test to see if she and the defendant are sisters. Defendant Lisa Mays says growing up, her mother never talked about her father, but she has always wanted to find him. Lisa hopes the DNA test will prove Chinitha is her sister, because she's already welcomed Lisa with open arms.
All rise. This court is now in session. The Honorable Judge Greg Mathis presiding. You may now be seated.
Good to have you here. And we are here to determine sibling relations. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
All right. Want to see if you all are sisters. And so we're going to start with you, Miss Kyles. Give me some background.
Good day, Judge Mathis.
Good day.
First and foremost, I just want to say thank you so much for allowing us to be on your show today. We are very honored, and thank you so much.
Thanks for coming.
I have petitioned the court for siblings DNA because Miss Mays is saying we share the same father. With that being said, I just want to know if that's the truth.
Give me some background on you all's association.
I can give you some background on me and my family, my mother, my father.
Mm-hmm.
My mother and father, they were married back in the 50s. Out of that marriage were 4 children. I am the youngest of the 4. So as far as I know, I am my father's youngest daughter. We were born and raised on the East Coast, Philadelphia and New York. My father worked across the bridge, so he worked in New Jersey, leading up to how Miss Mays may be a sibling of mine.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, my mother relocated. We all relocated to Florida, which is Riviera Beach, Florida, which is in Palm Beach County. We relocated down there when I was only 5. So speaking with Miss Mays, a lot of things that she was saying, I could not relate to it because we were already down in Florida at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can share a little bit about my father with you,
sure,
I would love to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So my father was tall and handsome, just like you, Judge Matt.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. He was
Only part I'm
genuine.
missing is the dark. You're supposed to be tall, dark, and handsome.
Right.
Right. That's true. He
I'm
was
tall, caramel, and handsome. How about that?
Right. It's all good. It's all good. So, and he was a very genuine and authentic man. He met no strangers. And of course, he was a funny guy. He would make you laugh from the time you meet him into the time you depart. So he was a good guy. And later on, around in the 70s, my mother and father, they did divorce, at which time, mid-70s, I relocated. I went to school at Tennessee State University, Nashville, Tennessee. While there attending college, I learned that my father was in Humboldt, Tennessee. So of course we reconnected in Tennessee, started that relationship, father and daughter relationship again. Upon my graduating from Tennessee State University, I relocated to Atlanta, Georgia, where I now reside. But the funny thing about my dad was, I guess he thought he was my age back then when I was in my early 20s. I was one of them girls that hung out at the club. And if you know anything about Atlanta back in the day, late 70s, early 80s, Camden Road was the strip, and that's where we hung out at. Our favorite spot was Mr. B's Figure 8. So my dad asked me if he could go to the club with me, and I'm like, for real? You want to hang out with your daughter? What you gonna do? Long story short, he hung out. After about the 3rd or 4th time me taking her with me, I asked him, I say, you know, these young girls, you gotta leave these young girls alone. I said, they don't want nothing but, he finished my sentence, Judge Mathis. He said, I already know what they want. My money and I'm gonna give it to him. Okay, at that point, I was done. I was like, I'm not even going there no more. I would let him do what he does, and he did. So, of course, I hung out. And then probably a few months after living in Atlanta, I decided to join the military, which I did. So I left Atlanta, joined the military, got stationed in Texas. He decided to go back to his stomping grounds, which was Pennsylvania. So he relocated himself back to Pennsylvania. And unfortunately, back in 1987, my dad had a massive heart attack and he passed away.
How old was he at that time?
He was in his 50s. He was probably 55, 54 years old. So he was young. Yeah. He was not old, because my mother to this day is still living, and she's 90. She just turned 90 in January this month.
God bless her.
So my mom is doing, thank you, and she's doing awesome. So she's doing really, really good. But if Lisa, Miss Mays is my sister, I have such a loving and welcoming family. We would love to bring her in and embrace her.
When did you all first meet again?
We haven't met in person, Judge Mathis.
Got it.
Miss Mays apparently did something with Ancestry.com. And so she connected with my niece, which is my oldest sister sibling. And that's how we ended up on a phone call with Miss Mays. Okay. And it was me and my siblings. We all were on a call where, me being the youngest, they were able to relate to some things that she was saying, but I wasn't.
When?
The call was last April the 24th.
Let me hear from you, Miss Mays.
Hi, I am the oldest child of my mom, who basically raised us by herself. She did get married when I was about 5 or 6 years old, but the marriage didn't last. So I'm the oldest of 5 children on my mother's side. I had 1 sister and 3 brothers.
Okay.
When I was growing up, my mom never really mentioned much about who my father was. I knew that her husband that she married wasn't my father. And during the years when I was growing up, she would say little things about my father, but she would never really talk about him, you know? And I always wondered like who he was. But if I tried to approach my mom, if it's something that she didn't feel comfortable talking about or she didn't want to talk about, she didn't. If it was something like we want to know about reproductive system, sex, something like that, she was like, I'll buy you a book and you can read it from there, because my mom was raised as an only child in a religious family. My grandfather was a minister of a giant church, and my grandmom, she was like the mother of the church, and she played piano, and my mom played piano there. So I grew up with a strong religious background. I sang in church and stuff like that. But just like during the course of the year, she never said anything about my dad. So when my mom's marriage didn't last, I had like a lot of responsibility for my, brothers and my sister. And I stayed
now,
home.
Who had the large church?
My grandfather.
Okay.
Because when things happen, I guess back in the day, it was like, shh, we're not going to talk about it, If it wasn't something that was appealing, like my mom was a young, unwed mother that, she was pregnant, they're not going to talk about that. For the most part about that, I know they sent my mom away to a girls' school where I was pretty much born in Atlantic City. And then I was sent to foster care because my grandma was not going to allow her to come home because she had a what will the neighbors think type of mentality. And eventually I almost was adopted, but my grandfather, he said, that's enough. We're not going to let this happen. And he brought me home. So my mom, she raised me, and when I was about 5 or 6, like I said, she got married and I had my other siblings. I left home with my husband, traveling the world. He was in the military. And then we came back to New Jersey where we broke up. And
is your mother still alive?
My mom passed away in 2006.
Okay.
She passed away in 2006. It's like a lot of tragedy has happened in my family. I've lost my mother and my first grandchild within 2 days apart. I've lost my brother. He died from a blood clot in his lungs. So that's another sibling that was lost. My sister was stabbed to death in front of her children in 2003. So she had a child that was 8 that saw everything that happened, and a 3-month-old. The oldest boy went with his father. The youngest child went with my mom. But 2 years later, my mom died suddenly. So I took guardianship of the little one. And it's been hell on wheels raising him because he was a handful, because growing up, he was angry because he didn't have his mother or his father. I've been homeless behind his behavior. I don't tell people that, but, I've had an old boyfriend. He's helped me with this little boy. He's 17 now. He's been, in and out of trouble, but you never give up, on a child. I've always tried to, teach him I always treated him like he was mine. I treat him like he's one of mine, but I've never gone through the things that I've gone through with this little boy. I've lost my son.
How?
Oldest, he went to fight in the war of Afghanistan, and he came home and committed suicide. So I've lost my son. I've had a lot of tragedy, losing people in the family. When I lost my mom, my first grandchild, my sister, my brother, my mom, there's always something happening. So about February of last year, I got a call that my youngest boy, because I had 3 kids, now I have 2. I had my daughter, she's the oldest, and I had my youngest son. My youngest son is 26 now, his name is James. I got a call that James was in the hospital and he was on life support. And he almost died because he had something wrong with him and they didn't know what it was. And they found out he was having problems with his thyroid. They made him paralyzed and he was just going through so much. So I went and took a plane home to go see about him. So when I went home, miraculously, he just was up walking around off of the stretcher and the doctors and nurses are like, what's going on? He's like, I'm looking for the bathroom. Where's the bathroom? They're like, you're not even supposed to be walking around. He's like, well, I'm looking for the bathroom. I have to use the bathroom. So he's still having some troubles with his thyroid, but he's doing fine. So I stayed home with him. And with COVID going on, I was not able to come back to my home in Florida. So I stayed with my son and my grandchildren. During the time that I stayed at home with my son and grandchildren, I went to see an old friend because I hadn't been in New Jersey since I buried my son, for 8 years. So I went to one of my old friends, houses that we all went to school together. We grew up together. And she was telling me that her daughter went and did a ancestry DNA. And they found out that my friend had a sister that she didn't know nothing about that lived in the next town over. And she said, Lisa, you always talked about not knowing who your father is. Why don't you try it? So I said, well, I don't have nothing but time. We can't go anywhere and do anything. So I tried it and I got a listing back from Ancestry with all these possible matches of people who could be my relative. So I took one of the closest matches and I wrote a message to her. And she was like, I think that you're my mom's sister. And I was like, can I speak to her? And I spoke to her. And then all of a sudden, it's like, I got a call from all these people who jumped on the phone and we were talking and it was just like so many people on the call. I don't even remember what anybody was saying. It was just so many people. I was like really happy, and we just want to be sure that, there's nothing going on where this isn't a possibility, because I would really love to have family. They're very nice people. They're very open to me. And with all this tragedy and loss that I've gone through, it would be such a joy.
Good. Well, let's hope it is, because certainly, you've went through a lot of tragedy, and hopefully this is a positive outcome, which would provide a lot of relief and a lot more family for you. Anything else from you, ma'am?
I pray that she is my sister because we would love her like no other. We would embrace her, and my family cannot wait to know if she is indeed our sister.
All right,
We're so looking forward to it.
Your prayers have come true.
All right.
She's your sister. Have a good day. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Baby.
All right.
Lisa, I can't wait to meet you, honey.
I can't wait to meet you too. Oh my God.
Oh my God, thank you.
We can call each other on the phone.
We can talk, Lisa. I know we're going to text
on the
it, but
phone.
God is good. I'm so happy. They've been blowing me up all day. They want to know. So now I can share the good news with them. And we got to get together as soon as we get out of this COVID.
Yes.